My friends, the great experiment.
It's the only way to make ends meet.
Hidden trick.
Would you look at that?
The greatest trick.
Look at you people, you're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
The greatest trick.
Welcome to Greatest Trek. It's a new Star Trek podcast from the makers of The Greatest Generation. I'm Adam Pranica.
I'm Ben Harrison. We're both struggling today, Adam. You, with a head cold, it's turned into a chest cold.
Yeah, head and chest. Doubling up. I brought it back from New York. I brought 2 pumpernickel everything bagels back from New York and a head cold.
I'm picturing it moving from your head down into your lungs like the map in a movie about a pandemic where they show the red spreading across the United States and then they zoom out and it spreads across the world.
I feel like I'm good for one of these a year, maybe 2. I fucking hate it.
Yeah, it's the worst.
This is relatable content to what we're about to watch, but I feel like I've got methods to expedite, but I don't know if they work. But what I want to do is feel like I have some control over it. Through effort, I can hasten it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe that's just all in my head and my chest. I'm on a heavy soup and juice diet. I feel like those are good things.
Yeah.
But even if they don't do anything at all, they make me feel better.
You love a soup.
Yeah.
You're looking for excuses to soup it up.
I know. I love soup more than most people love most other foods.
I'm running at half speed today because I'm very tired. This is not Daron related.
No?
My cousin was in town and he invited me out to my cousin is a very fancy lawyer. And he invited me out to a gala that I found out later that the only reason he really invited me was that it would have looked bad for his firm to not fill up all the seats at the 2 tables that they'd been allotted at this gala.
Wow.
It was nice to see him, and we got a nice hang-in, but I was mainly there as a seat filler.
Yeah, I get that.
And then I went out afterward with him to the bowling alley at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel and went bowling with a bunch of fancy white shoe litigation attorneys.
You're a secretly good athlete. I bet you're great at bowling.
We didn't finish the game because
I
don't know what happened.
That upsets me.
There were 10 people bowling in this game, and I think we just overran how much time we had reserved in the alley, and the next group was supposed to come in, so they asked us to leave after 8 racks or something like that.
That is so how they get you.
Yeah.
At a bowling alley or at Topgolf, you buy the amount of time, and the game never ends in such a way where you aren't made to buy more time.
Right. Yeah.
And I just can't leave a game in progress. They've got me.
We had no choice. We had to leave the game in progress. I did roll a 69, which
nice.
Wasn't my final score, but had to be my final score.
How many frames for that 69?
I think it was 7 or 8. I was in the top 2. It was me and a guy named Rahul that were really neck and neck for the top 2. I didn't get any strikes, but I picked up a bunch of spares, so I was doing okay.
Let me ask you another question.
Okay.
How heavy's that ball when you're creeping around, sticking your fingers in things? What's Ben's ball weight?
I do not have a preference, and it did not seem to me that they had any specific differences in balls at this particular bowling alley. They were all uniform.
This doesn't make any sense at all. Is this a regulation bowling alley or what?
No, it's a 2-lane alley that's mainly a fancy cocktail bar that has the gimmick of also having a couple of bowling lanes.
Are the lanes the proper distance and width, or is this funny bowling?
I didn't pull out my tape measure, Adam.
I just cannot believe that.
We were keeping score with a fucking chalkboard here. It wasn't video bowling, okay?
I just can't believe that they had bowling balls without weights on them.
They might have. It was dark in there. It was a moody, cool environment,
I think I'm seeing what's going on here. You were there to be social and have a good time, and my mind's going straight toward like getting the exact right weight of ball and making sure that this is a regulation width lane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where we diverge in the fun.
I would not have had a good time at this hang. No chicken fingers?
There was
no awful pizza?
There was French fries and some like really fancy olives going around.
You said this was the Hollywood Roosevelt?
Yeah.
Oh, this was the site of your wedding.
It was.
Reception, right?
Yeah, not the wedding or the reception, but the after party and the after party, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. They carry you and your wife up on those chairs with the song, and then they throw you in those chairs into the pool.
Yeah, they say, "Hey, have a nice Nagila."
Wait a second. Was Nagilim Jewish?
You struggle against the inevitable.
Yeah, that's why when they're going around on that other ship and it's empty, and they keep going from, they go in one door and they come in on the door on the opposite side of the bridge. All the doors have the little
thing on the doorway?
They start kicking their feet back and forth, and they link arms and they start going back and forth through the doors.
Wow. Yeah.
Have Nagilim,
Wow.
We're not here to talk about Star Trek today, Adam.
No, that's right. It's Greatest Trek Spring Break, Ben, week 5. And we wanted to celebrate some of the cast members of Strange New Worlds, their careers. And one actor that you and I were both very interested in knowing more about was Babs Olusanmokun. And we were like, what is a cool thing of his that we could watch to get to know a little bit more about his career as an actor? And didn't watch Dune. Didn't play Jazz Horse. That's one of his credits.
He's in Jazz Horse?
Yeah.
Damn.
He's the voice of Baptiste.
Good luck getting home.
Wow.
In Jazz Horse, he was in The Blacklist. A lot of credits here, but one credit popped to the surface for us for some reason. The Law & Order Special Victims Unit episode, Retro, in which he plays Mr. Morong.
Yeah, this, for some reason, was what we picked.
We had so many opportunities to select a credit that was Mr. Morite or Mr. Moriter than this one. Boy, what a dark episode this is.
Yeah, I get the sense that this is kind of the stock and trade of SVU, is that it starts dark and gets darker.
Yeah.
And this one is no exception. Definitely want to do a little content warning up at the top. A lot of sick babies and children in peril. No sexual crimes per se in this one, but it's a pretty dark app. So we're going to talk about what happens in it, and if any of those are kind of hot buzzers for anyone listening, you have been warned. Do you want to get into this episode, Adam?
I sure do, Ben. I'll start like this. In comedy, Star Trek podcasts are considered especially embarrassing. In Los Angeles, the dedicated hosts who perform in this genre are an elite show known as Greatest Trek. These are their episodes. Here it is, Ben. It's Law & Order SVU. The episode is called Retro. It came out in 2008. Written by Josh Kochev, Ben, who's the son of Ted Kochev, the director of First Blood, one of my favorite movies ever.
Whoa.
How about that?
It's written by a Nepo baby.
Yeah.
Cool. It looks like he's gotten 3 episodes of Law & Order SVU made.
Yeah.
He worked on A Dog's Life.
Mm-hmm.
A movie called Hidden Assassin.
If you're a fan of Babs Olusanmokun the way we are, you really want to tune in for the first 15-ish minutes of this episode.
Yeah.
And his part begins right away. This cold open is right outside of the Firehouse 99, where the engine is starting to roll out, but stops short to avoid broadsiding the cab that Babs is driving.
You trying to get yourself killed?
The baby.
What's wrong?
She's sick.
This is a pretty audacious way to ditch a baby at a firehouse.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if he was trying to do the like surrender a baby anonymously thing that you see that like sign on firehouses sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Or if he was just like, you guys can get to the hospital faster than I can. But like there's another emergency in progress and we never catch up with what happened with the fire.
Yeah. No one ever asks.
I guess those victims aren't so special.
This is a secretly sneaky bit of acting here by Babs because he's acting like he's acting.
Yeah.
Because this is a cover-up in progress. You don't know it yet. But when Mr. Morong gives this baby up, he explains that one of his fares left it in the back.
Yeah, he's a taxi driver, discovered that there was this baby in the back of his cab, and the baby has a very bad fever. Pretty soon, we are at the hospital with Mariska Hargitay and what's the dude cop's name? Maloney?
Oh, we're talking about Stabler and Benson, are we not?
I guess so. I just know Maloney from like the many memes about what a great butt he has.
Yeah, not a lot of butt this episode.
No. So yeah, they're like, why'd you call us down here? This baby hasn't been sexually assaulted or anything. And the doctor's like, what a weird thing to ask.
What's happened to her is a crime. Kids only get this sick when they don't get treated.
Treated for what?
The baby has full-blown AIDS, Adam.
Yeah, and thrush also.
Yeah, but thrush...
You know what thrush is?
It's like a yeast infection, right?
Oh.
Yeah, I think you can get it in your lower holes or your upper holes, but it's some kind of fungus or bacteria run amok type of deal.
Yeah, and this doctor is fucking pissed about this.
Yeah.
Because this baby is so sick due to neglect. Like, it's not just that the baby has AIDS and it has thrush, it's that these things have progressed to the extent that the baby's life is in danger.
Yeah, and I was trying to remind myself, like, what were the treatments and things in this era, because I actually did work on a couple of video projects about, like, getting AIDS medicine to less developed countries and stuff. And I think that the situation is much improved now, but, like, back then it was, like, a manageable disease with antiretrovirals. So this was like why on earth is this baby sick in this way if these drugs are available and we live in a developed nation?
I mean, one of the head fucks of this episode is that for 2008, like, yes, there are viable medicines that help people live longer and healthier lives, treatments for people with this illness, and a minority of people who don't want to take them and don't believe in them.
A lot of the same logic as the like anti-masker, anti-vaxxer set is being employed by many of the characters in this episode, but about a previous pandemic.
Right. So after the theme, we catch up with Mr. Morong a little bit more, and he's talking to Benson about what happened. And like conveniently, taxi cabs have dash cameras facing out and cab cameras facing in. And Stabler seems pretty confident that they'll be able to pull up the person's face, the face of the person who dropped the baby.
Right. There's some talk about like how these cameras work. They like turn on when somebody gets in and the meter gets started and they take a picture once a second or something like that. But the previous fare is an older gentleman, not the lady that Mr. Morong had described. So either there's something fucked about the cab cam or Mr. Morong did a bad thing.
The cab cam just had one of those like app filters on it that just turns everyone into an aging older white man.
Yeah.
Just trying to make it to work.
It's a deep fake.
Everyone likes that filter on Instagram.
Very popular. So they're like, hey, man, what's the deal? And he's like, well, I didn't do anything bad to a baby, but I did turn off the meter and accept cash for this ride because, you know, like doing it the straight up way, you can't make any money as a cabbie in New York City.
As a person who lived in New York for I mean, longer than me, which is no amount of time. Did you ever encounter a cab driver who wanted the cash fare in this way?
I never did. I've had a couple of like run-ins. Like you definitely.
Did you call the taxi authority like from the back seat when the guy tried to do that?
Right.
Hi, this is Ben Harrison. I'm inside a crime in progress.
I definitely had the like, I'm going to Brooklyn, but this taxi driver doesn't want to go to Brooklyn. And I think technically they're not allowed to do that, but
damn,
it used to happen pretty frequently. And then I'm not really sure what the like politically correct term for them is, but
just try out a couple different versions, Ben. I'm sure it'll be fine.
They used to get called gypsy cabs, and these were unmedallioned taxis that would only accept cash. And the rule with those is you negotiate the rate ahead of getting in,
right?
Because like you don't want to get there and find out that they have a very different number in their head.
If you've got a problem with Ben Harrison using that phrase, you can take it up with Wes Anderson, who constructed an entire cab company with that name in the Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah, he invented that. I'm just quoting him.
That cab has a dent in it.
No, I know that that's not a good thing to call him. I just don't know any other name that anyone would recognize.
Right.
Anyways.
G-word cabs.
They prefer to be called Roma cabs.
Yeah. So Stabler presses Mr. Morong on why the camera didn't get the fare, and he has to explain that he did it cash only because his admission comes from a very like pure place. He's like, look, man, gas is expensive, and sometimes cash fares help me pay for resources that allow me to have this job. And Stabler, to his credit, is like, all right, man, I get it. Like,
you did the right thing with this baby.
Yeah.
I'm not going to jam you up about, a meter grift, but
what I am going to do is send you to a sketch artist. And Mr. Morong is like, awesome. I've always wanted to see how that worked. And me as the viewer is sitting on the couch is like, yes, I want to see Babs describe this lady, and I want to see the caricature get drawn.
Yeah.
I love this part.
This is the best part.
Yeah.
And make the eyes, what's that nut?
Almonds?
Almonds, yeah, that's right.
Sorry, that doesn't happen. He doesn't go to the Seinfeld episode where they draw the lady
I was destroyed by this.
From The Blind Date or anything.
Could we take out a little of the deep, deep sadness of this episode and replace it with some fun caricature drawing? I'd like that.
You're going to have to go to Seinfeld for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, you were right. She is gorgeous.
So using mitochondrial DNA, I guess this is the medical examiner, this lady?
Yeah, Dr. Warner.
Yeah,
Ben, are you a big SVU head? We should probably take a beat to just talk about our familiarity with the show. Like, for a lot of people, the Law & Order universe is a comfort watch.
It is not for me. I really like procedurals, but I've never really been able to get into Law & Order, and I've never really tried. I've had roommates that loved it, so I've like caught lots of it over the course of my young adulthood. Just because it was like on in the apartment, but
yeah,
I'm not a person who like tunes into it on purpose by myself.
Yeah, it's not appointment television for me either, but every time I watch it, I'm really struck by just how, the greatness of their performances for such a long period of time and their intensity.
Yeah,
I think is really admirable. Like the standard of quality for this show has been high for so long. It's really an amazing success.
No, it's like it's one of these shows where you watch it and you're like, I understand why there are 485 episodes of this like spin-off of an even bigger television show.
Yeah.
And, like when I was a filmmaker in New York, occasionally I would have to cast actors in things. And the joke was always like, tell us if you haven't been on Law & Order, because like putting it that you have been on Law & Order on your acting resume doesn't tell us anything if you're an actor in New York. Like we will assume.
Yeah. That's fun. Yeah.
And like, I think that I thought that Babs really stood out among the guest stars in this episode, of which there are many.
Yeah. A lot of standout acting here, for sure.
So they figure out who the mom is, and we spend a very brief period in a interview room on Rikers Island with the lady whose baby this is, Joanne Suarez. She gave this baby up to her downstairs neighbors because she, I guess knew that she was going to be in and out of jail, and so she didn't want the baby to be put in the system. So she had the baby at home and never got a birth certificate. So there's no record of this baby's existence. But her downstairs neighbors should have been taking care of it while she was in Rikers. And they're like, did you know that your baby has AIDS? And this comes as a shock.
Detective Benson, famously played by Mariska Hargitay, delivers 2 lines of dialogue in back-to-back scenes that are so soul-crushing that it's just amazing. She's in the morgue and she asks Dr. Warner, did the baby die? Holy shit. There's gotta be a better way to ask that question, but she's probably seen hundreds of babies die in the length of her career. She just comes out and asks. And then with Joanne in the interview room in Rikers Island, she just, as a matter of factly, spills that not only does the baby have AIDS, but Joanne, the mother, has AIDS too. And wow.
Oof.
Wow.
I referred to the intensity of the performances, and I really do admire that, but you never get this entire episode that there is an inner struggle with the people on the law and order side at engaging with the very sad stories that become a career in this way.
Right.
I feel like all SVU episodes are this heavy. They keep on doing Law and Order spinoffs that are darker and grislier. And that preamble to this show is if you think Law and Order is fucked up,
get fucking ready.
We're continuing to top ourselves. Look out this fall for Law and Order Come.
Law and Order popping zits into other people's mouths.
Yeah, they just push the envelope on this. And I think there's an appetite for the procedural that is just consuming these 45 minutes.
Yeah.
In a binge style fashion. And I think when you don't watch someone deal with the trauma of it when it's their career, I think it makes it easier to binge in that way. You aren't made to think about the trauma over a long period of time.
If I'd watched this episode maybe a day or two earlier, I would have reached out to a friend of mine who is a prosecutor of this kind of crime in New York City, because she's a very happy, optimistic, nice person. And I know that she when she's at work is in this kind of trenches.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's as fast and furious as this episode. I think that there's also that time compression thing of this show where every scene is a pivotal moment in the case. So presumably there's days and weeks in between every scene where they're just working the case. There are people with the constitution to do this kind of work. I certainly am not one of them.
In talking all this out, it strikes me that this is exactly the type of person you want in a difficult job, the kind who is able to compartmentalize and stuff. I don't want a hyper emotional surgeon or pilot or whatever. I knew a medical examiner back when I lived in Seattle, and she was fun and funny and cool, and you would never know what she did because that was just one of her silos.
Yeah. You do not want a Ben Harrison or an Adam Pranica in any of these jobs.
No, this is the only job we can possibly do.
So she tells them that she left the baby.
And my wife begs me not to take it home with me every night.
I told you when we got together, baby, you were going to have to share me with every Star Trek episode, every Ferengi.
Yeah.
So she left her baby with a downstairs neighbor.
Who do you think that's going to be?
Well, it's Ida Jollo, Adam.
Yeah.
But she happens to live with Mr. Morong.
Oh, jeez. Mr. Morong!
Detectives,
Mr. Morong!
you have more questions.
Is the reason we didn't see the caricature being drawn is because Mr. Morong is sitting there describing his lady friend?
Yeah, he pulls out like a photo from his wallet and he's like, she looked a lot like this.
I don't know what I'm saying. I should probably go.
Like, that's the missing scene, I think, that kind of breaks the first third of this episode is like, what happened between then and now?
Right.
For Mr. Morong.
Yeah, what did they do with the picture? Did they like put the picture up in the post office? Have people been looking at this like fake person that he described?
Yeah.
Anyways, so they're from Gambia. They had expiring green cards, so they didn't want to just like go through official channels reporting this illicit AIDS baby because they were worried they would get deported. And they don't want to go back to Gambia, but they do have a ton of respect for the medical advice of the president of Gambia, who claims to have found an herbs-based cure for AIDS.
Chest paste, Ben.
Yeah.
No matter who you've told in your life, rubbing chest paste on them has no medical benefit.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of videos of people providing chest paste on the internet, and it never seems to be in a medical context.
Mr. Morong is like, look, we couldn't get the paste from Gambia. The shipping on that is just, it's so expensive. You'd never believe it.
They've got to pack it in dry ice. It's a whole thing.
We needed to find a local paste and a local doctor to prescribe it. And that's what leads the trail to Dr. Gideon Hutton's doorstep, a man who prescribes yogurt for AIDS.
Doctors prescribe, dairy departments provide.
Yeah.
Yogurt for AIDS. Are you out of your mind?
Not every patient with HIV needs medication.
Ladies and gentlemen, Martin Mull.
The great Martin Mull is in this episode.
This is one of those episodes where you get a couple of pops of like, oh my God, Viola Davis, Martin Mull.
Yeah, Viola Davis is Martin Mull's attorney.
Which I could spend a lot of time interrogating why the hell that match is made when he's in court later. Holy shit.
Yeah. The cops try to talk the DA into prosecuting Dr. Hutton for being a bad doctor who didn't give the right kind of medicine to this baby. And the DA is like, no, this is a civil case. Like, the way this is corrected in our system is he'll get medical malpractice lawsuits and he won't be able to get insurance and he'll stop being a doctor.
This is the point in the episode where the doctor nicknames start from all of the cast characters on the show. Like, I think you could assemble a reel of all of the Dr. Blanks, the jokes that everyone tells this episode, and I think there's like 12 of them.
Oh man, these jokes fucking slapped. Every single one got a belly laugh out of me.
Yeah.
I'm afraid they might buy the garbage Dr. Strangelove's selling.
Check out Dr. Demento's website.
It's time we put Dr. Do-Nothing out of business.
The ADA Greylick is actually a real central figure in this episode. And she's like, look, this doc is a quack, but that's really for the medical board to decide. That's not really something the DA's office wants to involve itself in. And Sergeant Munch gets in on a joke. Ice-T gets in on a joke. Ice-T has one scene in this episode, and it really makes me sad because he talks about the theory about AIDS being a government plot.
Yeah.
And it's something that his parents believed. And God, it almost takes the laugh completely out of all the jokes about this doctor that everyone tells.
I was also just thinking about how fucking dense the show Bible for this show must be when they have like literally 25 seasons or something like that. And like a character will toss off some like world building about their family and their upbringing like this.
Put that in the wiki.
Yeah. Like somebody has to be on staff to like catch it if somebody ever says like, yeah, so my parents were working at an AIDS charity. Like, no, they would never have done that, you know?
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you I saw Ice-T one time in public?
Oh, tell me about that. That had to be great, right?
I was walking down the street. I was looking in a store window, and I saw Ice-T in the reflection in the store window, like walk right by behind me. And I was like, holy shit, Ice-T just walked behind me. I'm on 8th Street in Manhattan. And I was like, I wonder where Ice-T is going. And we happen to be walking the same direction. So I'm like kind of walking behind him for a little while. And he turns into the Dashing Diva nail salon there on 8th Street. And he goes in to meet up with Coco.
Wow, you saw Ice-T and Coco.
Yeah, Ice loves Coco.
That's great. I had a celebrity encounter when I was in New York last weekend.
No kidding?
Face to face with Ethan Hawke in Brooklyn.
Whoa.
Just on the phone walking by doing his business. There he is. Couldn't be anyone else.
That's great.
Really fun.
We watched his documentary about Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward recently and thought it was really great.
Oh, I want to see that.
Yeah.
He is a skilled filmmaker.
He really is. So they start talking about AIDS deniers, and this is the kind of person that believes that there is no link between the human immunovirus and acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. And this is going to be a tough nut to crack, because if these people like genuinely believe the things they believe, like you can't like prosecute them for believing bullshit, basically.
Right. The goal from here is finding other patients so they can both help those patients, but also bring Dr. Hutton to justice, right?
Yeah. So this is a sort of subtle ploy that the ADA employs. She gets on TV and says, like, if you know anything about this baby or like why she would have been sick.
If you know any graduates of Dr. Nick University currently practicing medicine.
So she names Dr. Gideon Hutton in the press scrum. And
I was shocked by this, weren't you?
It really seems like the kind of thing that you never ever see, because the potential for, a libel lawsuit seems through the roof.
We see the reason why that's so rare, because we smash cut to Dr. Hutton in a police station screaming about a libel suit.
Yeah.
And he's got Viola Davis in his corner.
The camera whips over to Viola Davis, and she is just as pissed as he is.
This libelous trash has been running all afternoon.
I am done with you people propagating lies about my client.
This is when we find out about Lisa Ross, this baby that died of HIV.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess she's not a baby. She was 4 years old when she died.
The Lisa Ross story arrived on the tip line that the ADA put out into the world. It was blown up with Hutton supporters and one viable tip. Yeah. This Lisa Ross story.
A lot of enthusiastic Hutton stans out there.
Yeah. So they got to go to the Ross residence where Tommy answers the door. Tommy has a lot to do this episode. And initially I was like, child actor vibe. You see a child actor in a lot of Law and Order episodes, just like sort of struggling along. But I actually really admire this performance quite a bit. He does a lot.
He does. I wish they'd given Babs as much stuff to do as they gave Tommy, though, because Babs was
I agree.
I think Aidan Mitchell, the actor that plays Tommy Ross, like rose to the occasion. But I thought Babs was absolutely like showing that he was like in a different class of actor than a lot of the other guest stars. Like he's like on the Martin Mull, Viola Davis level in this episode in a way that a lot of the other guest stars just aren't, for me.
Yeah. And I mean, sadly, if you're here for the Babs performance in this episode, that chapter is closed. We don't see Babs anymore.
Yeah. So the mom, Susan, is explaining like, oh no, she died of like a bad reaction to penicillin. Nobody knew that she had this allergy because it was the first time she'd ever had it. And I rushed her back to Dr. Hutton's office, and he did, yeoman's work trying to save her, but it was just too late. It was just a really sad accident, and I've been real sad about it ever since.
Susan Ross is played by Paula Malcolmson, who is recognizable to me for being in Deadwood. She's Trixie, one of the main characters of that show.
Oh, no kidding.
She's also in Tombstone. She's Allie Earp, a performance I really enjoyed. She is a great actor.
I recognized her as Katniss's mother from Hunger Games.
I never watched the Hunger Games movies.
Oh.
So I didn't clock her from that.
In my experience, they have them in the headrest on every single airplane seat in existence.
Wow. Cool. What's interesting here is that she's credited for 2 episodes in Law & Order SVU, one in 2008, that's the episode we're watching today, and another one in 2019.
Whoa.
So she comes back as Stella Russell.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like there are lots and lots of actors in New York, but not enough to have no repeat performances in different roles. So
that's cool. I mean, her greatness as an actor is apparent here. She is a very damaged individual.
Yeah.
And her story is really sad.
Yeah.
She's a mom grieving for the death of her daughter. A daughter, she says, died of a penicillin allergy. But what about that rumor about the HIV? And does Susan think that's an accident? And
yeah, what do you think about that, Susan?
Would you let him see Lisa Ross's medical records? Do you think you could do that? She doesn't seem game to participate in this investigation.
No, she's very much under the sway of Dr. Hutton's way of thinking.
Yeah.
And Mr. Morong and his wife think very similarly about medical issues to Susan Ross. I feel like they are given a lot less respect for the way they think about it in this episode. It seems way weirder when they talk about their medical beliefs.
It's a spectrum, right? Because, on one end, it's like horse tranquilizer.
Yeah.
And on the other end, it's yogurt. And in the middle, there's like a chest paste.
Right.
So
yeah.
it just depends on where on that spectrum you are. But it's all kind of the same, right?
I think so. But Dr. Hutton unpacks Wentz's beliefs a lot in this episode. And it becomes very clear that he is very bigoted and a very hateful person.
Yeah.
And I thought it was sort of a missed opportunity that they didn't explore at all, that there's kind of an interesting common cause among bigots and the ignorant, people who
absolutely,
who
well put.
Obviously bigots are ignorant, but he is a kind of bigot that sets out to exploit the ignorance of others.
All bigots are ignorant, not all ignorants are bigots.
Yeah.
Is this what you're saying?
It's possible to be a nice idiot. They're talking to the DA and they're like, we got to figure out what's going on here. How do we find out how we found out about Susan Ross? Because this is an anonymous tip line we gave out and we can't trace the calls, because if we were tracing the calls on the anonymous tip line, nobody would ever call.
Yeah.
So they do a little The Fugitive style audio sleuthing and find out that there's a school bell in the call that they got about her and her daughter, and that leads them right to the guy that co-signed on her auto loan, a former lover and a former colleague at a fancy school up in Stamford, Connecticut. So they go up there and we discover that this dude is not only a jilted lover of hers, but he caught HIV from Susan.
Damn.
Hey, there's 2 kinds of AIDS. There's the vagina AIDS and then the needle-based AIDS. I'm a vagina guy.
God.
The story about how this happened is fucking bonk. She told him that her husband died in a safari accident in Kenya when their Jeep flipped over, and she was very badly injured and got a blood transfusion from which she contracted HIV.
Kind of a lot is made of Susan's wealth after not being a teacher anymore. But the whole African safari vacation situation made me wonder what their budgetary constraints might have been while she was a teacher.
Yeah, yeah. What was her husband doing that they had extravagant vacation in Kenya money?
I think there's a density to the information in a Law and Order episode that is so apparent in the last scene and this scene that I think is useful for not making you stop and think about how insane these events are. Because the teacher who is fucking this other teacher knows about her dead husband, probably knows about the Kenyan safari adventure.
Right.
probably knows the circumstances of his death and the transfusion and so forth.
I was also just thinking about like they've worked in a second African country here, but like there's something kind of weird about the way Africa and AIDS are so linked in everybody's minds that like they can't help but like write a bunch of excuses for like why African AIDS specifically is the issue. Like,
yeah, I mean, Dr. Hutton basically says later, it's the worst kind. You know that, don't you?
All AIDS are bad. There's no good AIDS. But I'm telling you, like I said, this is not the gay AIDS.
Let me ask you a question. Did you understand Susan's termination from the school to be about criminally negligent sexual homicide attempt at Jack Lufton? Or was she like, you can't fire someone for not disclosing an STD, right?
How about no?
Boy, I wish I had a really cogent answer to your question, Adam.
I don't quite understand how that happened, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, she got fired and paid $2 million, and he like is stuck still working this shitty job teaching chemistry to like assholes in Connecticut.
In terms of raw deals, Jack Lufton,
he's up there on the board with the babies and the kids that are dying of untreated AIDS, right?
He's got to be on the board. Yeah. I mean, at least the baby doesn't have to be a teacher in a struggling school district, right?
Yeah. So they've decided that the mom, Susan Ross, is potentially criminally negligent for her daughter's death because she didn't do anything to take ARVs while she was pregnant or to treat the baby after it was delivered. So to test that theory, they exhume the body. We see a casket coming up out of the ground, and I was like, I really hope they don't show kid corpse in this episode.
That is a big earth mover for a little body, right?
Yeah.
Like, now when you're digging a hole to exhume a baby's casket, you're gonna want to dig an opening slightly larger than that very tiny, cute casket.
That's got to be delicate stuff, right? Like usually grave plots are pretty close to each other, so you don't want to you don't want the claw to go down into the earth and get like half the body of the person next to the casket you're going for.
You got to use a metal detector or something, right, to get the dimensions?
Yeah.
And then you take the spray can and your fluorescent orange spray paint and draw your rectangle into the grass.
We're using a type of computer system popularized by the film Jurassic Park to make a map of the Earth underneath our feet.
We get a pretty elegant sequence of 3 scenes here. We get the interrogation room where Susan Ross takes great umbrage with these cops digging up her daughter.
Yeah.
And Detective Benson takes great umbrage with her giving those AIDS nips to her newborn.
Meanwhile, Dr. Warner is doing the autopsy, which is thankfully all framed from below, cutting off the thing she is working on.
Right. We get Dr. Hutton and Viola Davis interrogated by the ADA. And at the conclusion of all of these scenes, we learn that the kid was sick for weeks with what they thought was a cold, but it was pneumonia brought on by the HIV. And Dr. Warner, after finishing her autopsy, rules it a homicide. Or, if you're in heat, a homicide. Am I thinking of another movie?
Are you thinking of when Denzel called it a holocaust?
Nuclear war. Nuclear holocaust.
Oh, I guess I am. Yeah. That's how out of it I am.
So, they're like perp walking her through the station. And I think Dr. Hutton is getting cuffed as well. And Tommy Ross has to watch this from the waiting area and has a big meltdown, has to be restrained by Chris Maloney.
Give it up for Tommy Ross in this scene.
Yeah, he goes big.
I liked it.
Why are you doing this to us?
This is not the first time Stabler and Tommy Ross have a physical interaction, though, right?
No.
Stabler's holding him back, and he's like, oh, my ribs feel fine doing this. Just as I hope they will remain for the rest of this episode.
And Tommy's like, why did you say that? So in the courtroom, we've got a bunch of people wearing the ribbon. Kramer's there. He's not wearing the ribbon.
No.
But everybody else is wearing the ribbon.
This is America. I don't have to wear anything I don't want to wear.
Yeah.
You know, we're hearing ADA Greylick's, setting up this trial. We're getting Dr. Hutton's testimony where he's talking about how he doesn't like that the government is spending billions of dollars to save drug addicts and gays from a disease that won't affect people like him.
If I'm the ADA and I'm looking across the table at Viola Davis as the defense attorney, I don't like my chances. I think there's like the specter of the greatness of Viola Davis is on this episode in such a way where I expected her to win the entire time.
It's, like there's something really jarring about seeing her in this episode and this being, it's impossible for me to project myself into a mindset of Viola Davis not being like one of the prestige movie stars of our era.
Right.
And like, I guess her career just wasn't there at this point.
Yeah. I mean, incredibly, this was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I can't believe that also. That just seems nuts. The show in terms of its production feels modern. It feels like it was on TV this week.
Yeah. Hutton goes off on this fucking rant about the way the medical industry works and the idea that we shouldn't be moving a finger to protect these undesirable people that he thinks don't deserve medical care. It's like, why did you get into the medical industry in the first place, Dr. Hutton? Oh, I guess we don't have time for that question.
All I could think about was with the racism of his theory, why Donna Emmett, Viola Davis's character, would defend him for any amount of money.
Yeah.
Specifically, what he says on stand is so ugly and gross.
It's tough.
Yeah.
He also compares himself to Jesus later on outside.
Yeah. Nice courthouse step scene where Dr. Hutton and Dr. Warner argue about whether or not he is Jesus Christ.
Right.
That's good.
Differing opinions on that one, I guess.
And the ADA tells Dr. Warner that she actually has some doubts about their ability to win this case because juries love conspiracy theories, and also Viola Davis is over there.
Yeah. She's a fucking movie star, and she's just sitting there helping him.
Bang, bang, right? We're back in court with Susan Ross on the stand, describing her experience with HIV and how sick she felt on the medication. And she says Dr. Hutton saved her life. And on cross, Greylick shows the court a bunch of people in the gallery who are AIDS survivors. And this is so persuasive that Susan Ross has a seizure. A seizure I thought was faked.
I really
in
thought,
the moment.
I thought that they were going to say it was faked also.
Yeah.
It is not. Also, just the judge, exerting as little control as he does over his courtroom, letting this fucking show trial go the way ADA Greylick is on one in this episode, doing wildly irresponsible lawyering all the way through.
It's wildly entertaining lawyering.
It is.
And it's all your fault. Are you happy, D? Is this what you wanted? You just gave this baby full-blown AIDS.
So it turns out what she's got is toxoplasmosis, and I could not believe this, Adam.
Is that the cat litter thing?
It is the cat litter thing, and it is also the thing that Martin Shkreli made that medication way more expensive to treat.
No way.
I stopped watching this episode and I looked at my phone and I had an article from Ars Technica pop up about how the company that Martin Shkreli founded, with the goal of buying up, single disease medications and jacking up the prices of, and the toxoplasmosis medicine being the first example of that, is going bankrupt. They're going out of business. And
sure,
they never lowered the price on that medicine. Like that, they did that in 2014, so well after this episode came out. But like they jacked up the price, and then Martin Shkreli got in all that legal trouble, and I believe is in jail right now. But
don't cat owners have enough trouble as it is without the extreme cost of the medicines they require?
Yeah, I don't know. So Shkreli doesn't get a name check in this one, but yeah. So she is sick as fuck in the hospital, and we get a very intense scene between her and Detective Benson, where Susan realizes how wrong, how misguided she's been, and how she believed Hutton because it was comforting and because it like didn't force her to, confront anything else about herself that she didn't want to confront.
I mean, you get it, right? Like difficult news, the worst news. She has a hard time confronting that head on, and she will cling to...
She has to like admit that her daughter died because of bad decisions and like stupid shit that she did.
This is like one aspect to modern society that is so difficult to accept, which is like just generally how unwilling anyone is to admit that they're wrong.
Right. And I think one of the appeals of a show like Bar Rescue, like it is one of the rare reality shows where somebody has to admit that they're wrong for real about a real thing that is happening in their life on camera.
Yeah, most people wouldn't be willing to do that, it seems like.
So Detective Benson is basically in the process of convincing Susan Ross, like when you're feeling a little bit better, you're going to come testify against Dr. Hutton, and she fucking flatlines right then and there.
RSVP Susan Ross. God, these detectives see some shit. Just another day at the office.
Yeah. I'm looking at my notes, and as you said that, my next note was, Jesus, this fucking shit. So like then they're talking about like, oh yeah, now we're digging up way more bodies because there's like all of these other kids that died under Hutton's care.
3 dead kids.
Like they need to deliver more gas to the cemetery to fill up the earth movers.
Right.
That guy's working overtime.
So it's 5 years and no more medical license for Dr. Gideon Hutton, Adam. And the scene where he's like accepting his plea bargain because he like had a hand in the deaths of multiple children that the ADA will easily be able to prove in court is he's not exactly penitent in this moment.
No, not at all.
But you're not going to silence me. I will speak the truth from my prison cell.
This performance is really interesting to me because I think Dr. Hutton is portrayed as the monstrous quack that he is, like ably. But I wonder how we would feel if he did feel bad about dead kids.
Right.
But he just doesn't.
He doesn't.
He believes more in his own beliefs than he feels bad about dead kids. And that is like a break in someone's humanity that I just can't get with.
Yeah. It's also just like an interesting moment for Viola Davis's character because like she has played the attorney who really believes everything she's saying the entire time. And the second she sees the writing on the wall, she turns to him and she's like, take the fucking deal, dude.
It's over.
She has an opportunity to dump this fucking racist and does it at her first opportunity.
Yeah.
It's great.
So episode over, right? We got our man.
No.
There's more sad shit to happen?
There sure is.
Oh.
Here's the thing. I mean, the search for other families continues, and Stabler and Benson are looking through the files. 7 families so far are out there and in need of help. And a lab report from Susan's file shows a timeline that seems to indicate that Tommy might have HIV. And so the idea is to forcibly blood test Tommy Ross. And in attempting to do so, Stabler gets kicked in the chest and breaks 2 ribs, and Viola Davis bursts in and takes Tommy out of there before they can get the blood.
Yeah, I didn't really understand how she became Tommy Ross's attorney, but she somehow justifies this.
Yeah.
he's like, I guess, in a foster home or something. Like, very little is made about like what a fucked up situation Tommy Ross is in.
Yeah.
But him having kicked Stabler is like the pretext for him charging him with a crime so that they can force the issue of testing him for HIV.
It's also the pretext for a shirtless scene with Christopher Maloney that follows.
Yeah.
Where he reveals his power girdle that he's wearing for his broken ribs. 2 broken ribs. Ouch.
Have you ever had broken ribs, Adam?
Not that I know of. I think I would know it if I had, but
yeah, it's no fun.
Yeah.
I broke a rib or 2 skiing one time, and it really sucks because like anytime, like it's mostly like getting in and out of bed that really hurts. Like anytime you're like changing the way gravity is acting on your torso, oof, no fun at all.
Did you just ask the doctor to take out the ribs instead?
Yeah,
of like allowing them to heal.
Yeah, that's why I'm so flexible in a particular way.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I'd always wondered why when I leave the green room and come back, I always find you folded over like that.
I'm like, I'll be with you in a second.
Like half the hummus is gone.
Pour me another tequila.
And your head is in your own pants.
We get a whole nother sequence in court. This is a competency hearing. Like Tommy was raised an AIDS denier, so he doesn't want to get tested for HIV. And again, the DA lady is just like completely fucking unhinged in how she approaches the courtroom scene.
I thought she was going to get kicked in the ribs with how in Tommy's face she gets and how close.
Yeah.
Your mother sold you a bill of goods, Tommy. She risked your life to feed her denial.
Stop saying bad things about my mother.
But it is decided by the judge that Tommy is free to live his, like he knows what the ramifications of the decision are, and he's free to live his life without getting tested if that is what he chooses. And that is what he chooses. So there's like a kind of touching moment between him and Maloney where they're like, hey, like no hard feelings. Like, I know that was like whack what we tried to do to you. I just want you to do me one favor, you know, like maybe since you broke my fucking ribs, you can like do me this one solid. And that is go meet a kid named Kyle in the hospital who has like a very overfull bald cap on.
Oh, you thought this was a bald cap?
I really did. It looked like this kid had like a very thick head of hair that they were like really struggling to hide under this fucking rubber bald cap.
Yeah. I get a headache when I'm wearing a hat that's too tight. How do you think an entire day wearing this bald cap has got to feel?
Ugh. So Kyle has been raised by a Christian scientist and had a brain tumor and is now being treated for his cancer. So it's like my parents believe some fucking bullshit too, man.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think of that?
Tommy, your parents are Val Kilmer? And someone Val Kilmer had sex with? What? It's sad stuff. It's sad especially because, I mean, I'm not going to say especially because I think the brain cancer is the worst part of the story. A close second is how his fucked up family situation led to the delay in his treatment and that he was sort of ostracized from his Christian Science family.
Yeah.
And that is a mega bummer.
It really is.
Stabler's like, here's another kid that kicked me in the ribs.
Yeah.
Not that long ago. It's the relationship I have.
The episode is like, okay, after the like scared people from Africa who were worried about being deported and so let a baby get extremely sick to the point that it had thrush and they had to surrender it to the fire department, and after the woman dying of a treatable illness on the stand, and after the like half a dozen kids we found out died under the care of this doctor, and after Stabler got kicked in the ribs so hard that they broke, and after the Christian Science kid having terrible brain tumor.
Preach.
Let's get one last sad revelation in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. get maximum sadness before the finish line here.
Tommy, whose father, sister, and mother are all dead, finds out that he has HIV.
Oof. I mean, the moment for this child actor really comes to a crescendo here, right? Because there's so much happening here that's nonverbal between Tommy and Stabler that I like that they just end with a look, you know?
Yeah.
Like he admits the horrible truth, but there isn't an overwritten kind of apology or Stabler telling him that everything's going to be all right. Like there's a little bit of that, but it's not that sugary bullshit, you know? Like this is a dark show.
Yeah.
About a dark subject with dark characters in it, and this is the sort of dark ending that you would get on a show like this.
No sugarcoating at all.
Yeah.
It was just like one last really firm kick in the dick to go out on. Did you like this episode of Law & Order SVU?
It was a kick in the ribs, Ben. I mean, it was a...
Why did I say dick? God fucking damn it. That was right there.
As an exploration of Babs Olusanmokun's acting resume, I think we need more episodes to really do that. It was neat to see him in something else, playing a completely different person the way he does. Playing a character on a show where this is part of the rung of being an actor. You know? Like, you toil away on Law & Order episodes, and some actors make the leap, and sometimes they don't. And it was neat to see Babs on a show like this, and to recognize his potential. I mean, as a show, you and I differ a lot on our appetites for, you know, darkness or cruelty with our recreational television. And I do sometimes enjoy a dark show, but I specifically don't enjoy procedurals like this. Now, I mean, I want to walk that back. Like, I love The Wire, and I can appreciate its greatness, but like, I think one of the things that makes The Wire really great is it's only 10 episodes a season or whatever.
Right.
And what I can't do is watch 30 episodes of True Detective in 2 weeks, or 500 episodes of Law & Order SVU over the course of months as a form of entertainment. And like, I'm glad shows like this exist for all of the obvious reasons. It's not a show that I'm a huge fan of specifically, even though I can get on its level with its darkness.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have kind of a complicated answer to that question. I like the exercise of watching it maybe mostly because I don't watch it all the time. How's that?
I kind of feel the same way. Like I approached this one going like, you know, I love many procedurals, like Baywatch, famously, a show I really like watching.
Sure.
You know, lots of, and I loved The Wire as well. I've enjoyed many detective shows over the course of my life. And I do really like the kind of like, here's a new adventure every week kind of television. And I think that Star Trek is often that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one specifically doesn't appeal to me a ton. I understand why it does for people, though. Like, I think that being scared of a lot of the kinds of things that shows like this deals with is like a very normal thing. And having a pretty safe environment to process those feelings like a show like this is fine. It's just like, it's not to my taste for an evening of watching, but as a way of seeing an early role for Dr. Mbenga, I really enjoyed it. And I think that like one thing I was thinking about is like, for all of the talking about doctors and like medical jargon thrown about in this episode, I was like,
yeah,
I wish that they'd given him more like that to do, because we know that he's got that gear, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Adam, do you want to see if there's anything in our priority one inbox today?
I was just about to drop these priority one messages off at my local fire station, but maybe you and I can care for them temporarily.
Okay.
Priority one message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
Ben, our first priority one message is from the Dith. via Morn of Luria. It is to Captain Lesotho. That message goes like this: congratulations on your new home in Florida. I'm sending this extremely sensitive Priority 1 message via my most secure channel, Morn of Luria. I know he's a bit of a blabbermouth, so I hope this confidential new home advice gets to you safely. If not, maybe Ben and Adam could fill in. The message I gave Morn is as follows.
And that's the end of the message?
I guess so. Maybe we put the crickets there or something.
Okay.
Morn, terrible messenger.
Yeah.
Bad job by the Dith in their choice of messenger.
Yeah, as likely to barf up a fortune as to actually get you your message, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hey, look at this. Our second Priority 1 message is from Captain Lesotho.
Oh.
And it's to Madame Mare, a.k.a. the Dith, a.k.a. Meredith, a.k.a. Mare. Goes like this. Hey, Mare, remember the Titans? And the S at the end of Titan is in parentheses, so I think that this is talking about the Titan.
Oh,
which
yeah.
does not bear that name any longer.
Nope. Enterprise Grandpa.
I wonder, did Captain Lesotho and Mare, a.k.a. the Dith, coordinate this? Because we're like super late on getting these P1s out. Like they both requested dates that have long passed.
Yeah, I think we could blame our friend at the network, Danny, for this, for putting these two messages together.
Wow. Well, if you'd like to get a very interestingly timed Priority 1 message, head to MaximumFun.org/Jumbotron and set one up today.
Oh, this is a crucial question for today's subject matter, Ben. Did you discover yourself an Edward Larkin in this episode of Law & Order SVU, the sex crimes Law & Order?
You know, Edward Larkin famously yells, "I'm not the dumb one."
He's a scientist, not a doctor, correct?
Right, but considers himself a learned man.
Sure.
So I think that Dr. Hutton is going to get it from me. Because Dr. Hutton is fucking dumb.
I am shocked that your Larkin wasn't my Larkin. Mr. Morong! Mr. Morong! Come on, dude. You knew that was a baby you'd been taking care of.
Yeah. He did know that was a baby.
How did you think this was going to play out? And then you go describe the person to a caricature artist?
I want to see the picture that he described. like, does it look like when you make an avatar for your character in Skyrim and you just like put everything to one extreme or the other?
I got a question.
Like, oh yeah, bigger eyes.
For the Friends of DeSoto who are associated with law enforcement, I wonder if when a sketch artist finishes their work and maybe the need for that work is over, does the artist keep that in like a portfolio the way a tattoo artist would? Or does the person describing it get to keep it if they're describing a family member or something? Like, what happens to all that?
It's a great question.
I want to know.
Yeah. Is it like J.K. Woodward where occasionally they sell them and support a charity or something?
That would be great. You like to see that. Yeah. So, I mean, Mr. Morong, like, having to endure a sketch artist situation, knowing that it's all bullshit. I wanted that scene so bad.
Man. If anybody listening is a sketch artist also.
Yeah, I want to know more.
Yeah, very curious about that. All right. Well, Adam, that was a very fun episode of the show. Do you want to head over to the Warning Bois?
Ben, I've taken my Earth Mover over to the Warning Boys channel in Slack, and I'm moving the bucket over the very small plot that contains our message today.
What an exhumorous way of putting it, Adam.
Wow, what a great word to use.
Prepare a buoy and launch it when ready.
Warning buoys.
An emergency buoy. A warning buoy.
Ben, Dan on Twitter sent us a map that he drew. This is related to the Devil's Revenge episode we did. It's a map to the Black Hollow Cave. And this looks screen accurate.
Yeah. It's got sort of a family circus, like Billy going to do a chore vibe to it. A lot of like dashed lines over and through different places.
Can't ignore the neat cavern looking like a butt, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very hard to miss that.
Really great.
Yeah.
I also enjoy the Mob Justice Field and the Shatner shortcut.
You can find that posted on the Greatest Trek Twitter on May the 5th. If you want to see that for yourself, very cool.
May the 5th be with you. Thanks, Dan. Thanks to everybody that makes a social media a post about the show. Really helps get the word out, and we couldn't appreciate it more.
Yeah, we probably don't want this particular episode of Greatest Trek to be anyone's first experience, but...
I thought this was a Star Trek podcast. What the fuck is going on?
What a strange and fun exercise our spring break has been. Going all over the place, Ben.
Yeah, we're going into the Crypt next week.
Yeah, that's right. And here's Wendy to tell you all about that.
Greatest Trek is an Uxbridge Shimoda podcast on the Maximum Fun Network. It's hosted by Ben Harrison and Adam Pranica, and it's produced and edited by Wendy Pretty. We've got 2 more spring break episodes left before Strange New World starts up again. Next week on Friday, Ben and Adam will be back with a review of Tales from the Crypt, Season 2, Episode 11. It's called Judy, You're Not Yourself Today, and it stars Carol Kane, who, of course, is joining the Strange New Worlds cast for Season 2. You can find that full episode on YouTube, and I hope you'll join us back here next week for that. Thank you to Adam Ragusia for composing all of the original music for this show. He has a podcast and a YouTube cooking channel that we highly recommend. Just search for Adam Ragusia. Thank you to Nick Ditmore for creating the show art and Bill Tilley for managing the @GreatestTrek social media pages on Instagram, Twitter, and Mastodon. Follow those accounts to stay up to date and use the hashtag #GreatestTrek when you talk about the show online. You can also find fan-run communities on Reddit, Facebook, and on Discord at drunkshimoda.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on Greatest Trek.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned.
Audience supported.